Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we're going to talk about medieval and ancient armor again, and specifically about the mail armor. Don't you just love this sound? Alright, so there are a lot of things to say about this, so I'll try to make it short and see if I can manage within 10-15 minutes, okay? The thing is that this was one of the most popular kind of armors in ancient times. When you watch a film, for example, let's say you watch your medieval film and you see this and it makes it look so medieval, and then you watch this film about the ancient Romans during the Repubblica, and it makes them look so Roman, and then you see the Japanese use these and with the samurai and so and they look so Japanese, and then you see and then you start realizing that pretty much everyone in the planet, or at least in the Western world and a bit of the Eastern world, basically used this one in ancient times. So again, it was used obviously in the Middle Ages, but we know that we have accounts and archaeological discoveries and also particularly iconography which shows that probably it was invented by the Celts, or at least that's probably who we took it from as far as we Romans are concerned, because, sorry, I'm Italian, so I tend to do that. I forget that you're not all Italians listening to me on YouTube. There are accounts that make us think that it was used even from as early as the 4th century before Christ. So it was used, as I said, by the Romans. It was called lorica amata. And it was actually one of the main kind of armor that the Romans used. The idea that we have that the Roman legionnaire, particularly during the imperial period, was wearing the lorica segmentata, or lorica laminata, as probably the real name was, is a very popular image. That's a very popular image of the Roman legionnaire. But the thing is that before that, this one was used by normal auxiliary forces and legionnaires. And then the new lorica segmentata, I'll just use the popular name, was implemented. But then around the 3rd century, Anno Domini, it was discontinued for some reasons we don't really know. And this one was implemented again. So this one never really stopped being used that much, as far as the Romans are concerned. And that's as far as the Romans are concerned. In the Middle Ages, it was used by infantry troops, but it was also the primary armor and equipment of the mounted nobility. That's until the actual plate came into existence. And of course, plate gave a better protection, particularly against projectile and crossbow arrows, and it had a better resistance. It was a better kind of armor from a lot of point of views. But this one became the secondary kind of gear, and that's pretty much the same thing that happened with the Romans during the application and the introduction of lorica segmentata. But then again, it never really was discontinued, or at least until this 16th century. And it widespread to Africa, to the Middle East, to Asia as well, because we have the ksari, which in Japanese means chain. And we do have examples of that, so they use it as well. And actually the Asian and Japanese rings tended to be smaller than their European counterpart. As far as the Romans are concerned, what's interesting to say is that lorica amata, so this is a typical medieval one. The Roman version would have had flaps hanging on the shoulders, okay? So you can immediately spot it from that point of view, which they probably took from some other Greek examples anyways. So we can say that male armor in all its pieces and versions constituted basically the bulk of the equipment of ancient warfare. It was also used in India. So having considered these things, we also need to talk about the costs pertaining to this. A male armor would be extremely expensive, a lot more expensive than a gambeson, for example, and in some rare cases it could also be more expensive than some plate armors, okay? So this was not a cheap remedy, a kind of equipment at all. For example, even the Lorica Amata, the Roman version, would have been made of over 30,000 rings, and it would take probably a little bit over 2 months to make it. And that is if you use slaves. Slaves aren't very famous for having paid holidays and lunch breaks. So you can imagine how long it would take to make one of these. So difficult to make, very expensive, time consuming. These are some of the characteristics of this kind of armor. So let's see the positive aspects of a mail armor. Well, first thing we need to say that if some of you own a mail armor, you will probably know, or you will agree with me, that it's one of the easiest as far as maintenance is concerned. Why? Because basically you don't have to worry about rust. And I own, as you know, as I've already said, a few set of armors, and I have to say the plate is difficult to maintain, particularly to take care of, particularly if it's mild steel, okay? And iron also has the same problem, corrosion. Rust just happens on those kind of armors, and even if you keep on taking care of them, and if you don't, then you know what happens. But in the case of mail, well, I've been having this mail armor for a little bit, well, around 2 years now. I never ever performed one bit of maintenance on it, and it has not even one little bit of rust, and it's not stainless, okay? So the reason for that, it's very simple: constant friction of the rings because of the way it's made. So this constant friction between the rings, it prevents rust from forming. So that's one of the reasons why this one was very easy to maintain. It could last even for several decades. Obviously not considering the idea of being destroyed or during a battle, but it could still be rather easily repaired. Another positive aspect is mobility. It's heavy because it is heavy, but the thing is that first of all, and I've already talked about this in the video where I talk about the Templars, which used this one. So again, here's another example. The Templar Knights used this one as well. Was the idea of putting a belt around this, and this was something that also the Viking used. And here is another example, another population that used mail was the Viking. If you put a very tight belt around the mail, as I've already explained, the weight will not be all on your shoulders, but it will be distributed also on your hips, and that makes it a lot lighter to wear. And also you have a lot of mobility, okay, with this one, so it doesn't slow you down too much. And I've tried it and put it on hundreds of times now, and it's rather interesting. Again, this kind of armor could be used as a main armor, so you just wear this one and that's your armor with probably a gambeson underneath. Or you could use it to supply extra protection for plate armor, particularly for those parts where plate couldn't be used because you needed some mobility, okay? So for example, the armpit and the groin and other parts like that. In some cases, also the throat area for those cases in which you didn't have a gorget or a bever. This one kept being using, and until we actually reached the full suit of armor, in which case you wouldn't really wear a whole mail armor, but you would just wear a kind of padded jacket into which some little specific pieces would be riveted, okay, just in those parts where you needed them to decrease the overall weight. All right, so it is now, as you know, wearing time. Alright, so please try to imagine me wearing a thinner gambeson. At the moment I do have a gambeson in my collection, but it's rather thick, and it's probably that's more used for plate armor. For this kind of mail, to put one underneath this mail, I would need a slightly thinner one. So in this case, you'll just have to use your imagination. So I have enormous mobility, but the weight is still there. For this specific one, we're talking about around 14 kilos. That's what I have on me at the moment. Yet I can jump, I can move, I can fight. So yeah, it's not impeding me in any way. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please thumb up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't. And also, if you want, share this video on Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, wherever you want. So thank you very much for watching, and remember, the Metatron has spread his wings. Goodbye.